All right, we'll pick back up where we ended last week then. Last week we were kind of wrapping up kind of our first major question in the origins of everything that is, kind of from a logical standpoint. And here's where we came down to, that for the first, what I'll call the first major question, the existence of all the matter and energy in the universe, you've got really three main theories when it comes down to it. One is that there is a superior entity who created it. God created the heavens and the earth. The second, and this is kind of a widely held, is, well, it was not created, but we don't really know how it got here, but we just know it wasn't created. And, we'll come up with a theory to fill in when we have one. And the third, something part of a very loosely defined thing called M theory. And one of the two major holdings of it that are relevant to us is that the universe spontaneously created itself. And that is a seriously proposed theory, although one lacking any support. We talked about that a little bit. You can't test any of these things, so by definition, none of them are science. You can't directly observe any of these, obviously. None of us were there. So if anybody tells you we can only consider science, well, none of these things are science. None of them. And here's the thing. We looked at kind of what is the hypothesis of a creator. And you may not like the hypothesis, but it would be compatible with what we see around us, the idea that a superior entity created it. If you say there was no creator, but we don't really have a theory, well, there's nothing to evaluate. I mean, unless you give me a hypothesis, that there's nothing to consider, okay? I'm happy to entertain the idea, but it'll have to be better than that to try to explain anything. And the idea that it spontaneously created itself, we looked at that a little bit, and we'll look at it some more later on, simply not compatible with what we observe. Matter does not create itself, and as you'll see in a bit, even the proponents of that theory, if you want to call it that, have to freely admit there is absolutely no evidence whatsoever for it. So that's kind of where we left off then. You can't disprove, much less prove any of those without some other confirmation. So we may have to make our mind up on some of the later questions and then come back and see if it helps inform our thinking on this one. But they all involve something beyond our understanding and maybe something eternal. And so we're really left to decide which one makes the most sense, and that is to say which one has the greatest explanatory power is a term that you will often hear. Which one offers the most sense to explain what we see around us. And I'll say this too, excuse me, when the most widely held atheistic position is, well, there's no creator, but we don't know what happened, well, that leaves me really lacking. I'm underwhelmed. Okay, what does that tell you? Now, I'm not saying it couldn't be, but show me a good theory at least. Which one of those has explanatory power? So here's where we left off last time. If you look at the idea that God created it, it would exactly explain what we see in the universe. If that's true, it would exactly explain things. Well, on this one, there's no theory but no creator. Well, we don't have anything to consider, so it can't explain anything if you don't give me a theory to consider. I hope that makes sense. And one that is not compatible with known science, known phenomena in the universe, etc., that doesn't have any explanatory power either, because when you show me something that absolutely does not happen, it's hard for me to accept that, well, that's the explanation for how the universe got here. And we saw a quote from Professor Hawking, and he just says, he feels no need to justify that. He just said, yeah, that's how it happened. That's how it happened. It created itself, and here we are. No proof, no evidence. It's totally incompatible with everything we know, but that's what happened. You can be sure of it. I have a problem with that. So let's go on then to the second major question in my way of thinking. That is, how about the precise structure and organization of the universe? Okay, because that's a whole nother thing separate from something appeared. How did it get to appear exactly the way it is? And I'll tell you that the universe we live in, if you remember the old story, Goldilocks would really love this universe because it's just right. Everything about this universe, this galaxy, this solar system, this planet, it's just right for life to exist and for you and me you and I to be here. Yeah, that's correct. So let me show you a little bit about what I mean. Here's a quote from somebody named Paul Davies, an astronomer, etc. He is not a believer in God. Now, some people will tell you, well, you need to quit quoting people, who don't believe in creation. No, you don't misquote people, and I'm not. I'm very careful to put references. And they say, well, you're quoting him out of context. He doesn't believe in God. No, he doesn't. But it's okay to quote people when they tell you things that don't make sense or that do. Okay? So in a court, somebody might call that an admission against interest. We saw one last week. It's kind of like, is it correct that that he did not shoot you until you grabbed your gun and pointed it at his head? That's correct. Okay, well, I'm not misquoting the guy. That's what he said. Okay? It didn't help him, but that's what he said. All right, so I'm not going to misquote anybody. I just want you to, you're going to get that accusation a lot when you take the honest observations of a lot of atheists and show that sometimes it doesn't make sense of things. Well, here's what Professor Davies said. He's talking about a most unlikely universe. That is, most unlikely to have occurred just from a random explosion. Okay? Take a big bang, make it explode, however it happened, and just let it explode at random. It is extremely unlikely that it would have produced this from an explosion. Okay? He says, now he doesn't believe that there's a God, mind you, but notice what he says. It seems as though somebody has fine-tuned nature's numbers to make the universe. He says the impression of design is overwhelming. May I suggest to you that anytime you're considering something, if the impression of design is overwhelming, then the possibility that it was designed ought to be your first inference. Now, you can consider other possibilities for sure, okay? If there was an explosion in a junkyard, what do you think the likelihood that is that arose at random out of it? Okay, whatever you're wearing, no matter what it is, whatever device you're carrying, whatever it is, if you've got a book in your hands that has letters in a particular order, what are the chances that that happened at random? Well, you would laugh. Pretty much zero, right? And yet that's what you're supposed to believe about the universe landing the way it did. All right, so he says the impression of design is overwhelming, and boy, is he right. The precise arrangement of this universe that allows life to exist here. Now, I'm going to put some things up here. I do not pretend to understand all of the things or even a whole lot about the things that I'm putting on the screen, okay? I am not telling you that I'm some expert in cosmology, quantum mechanics, and physics, etc. I am not pretending at all. All right, but you know about gravity. Nobody understands what makes gravity work, but we just know that it is, and it's a powerful force. Extremely powerful. It's what holds things in orbit, okay? The gravitational constant is why they knew that there was going to be a lunar eclipse the other night, etc. And I missed the last extensive one. I think they said it was 600 years ago, so I just missed that last one. Saw a little bit of the one the other night. I decided it was cold that night. If I could see it out the back window, then I was going to see it. If it required going outside, then I was just going to wait for the next one 600 years from now. Okay, but why did they know that it was going to be there? Gravitational constants and electromagnetic forces and nuclear forces and the exact velocity rate at which the universe is expanding that allows planets to work like they do. Our location in the galaxy. In the Milky Way, we're kind of out here, and you know what? If we were a little bit closer in, you're cooked with radiation and heat from so many stars being that close to you. Only out here can you have a planet like ours where life can actually exist. Okay, there are others. A just right star. A star that's exactly the right mass, the right temperature, etc., and we're just the right distance from it. Okay, think about that. You think about the temperature extremes between winter and summer, especially some places on this planet, and that's from about this much percentage difference from summer to winter in our distance from the sun. Okay, but make that 90 million miles, and you think life can exist? No. I mean, you know, we're out there freezing and sweating even just with this much variation. Only here could we exist. just right neighbors, the moons, Jupiter, Saturn. Do you know that most of the meteors that would strike Earth are instead drawn away by the huge gravity of Jupiter and Saturn, and so they don't hit us? They hit the big decoy instead, and we're spared from many things that would wipe out life. The climate, the atmosphere, okay, on and on and on. Well, how likely is all this without some kind of intentional direction? How likely is this just by random events? Well, look, remember what we said a minute ago, what Professor Davies says? He said, it looks, now he doesn't believe it, he says, but it does look like somebody did this, like somebody fine-tuned it to be the way that it is. He says the impression of design is overwhelming, and it is. We could spend hours on this. All right, let me show you somebody else. Brad Lindley said, as to how likely is it that this happened at random without a creator? He said the universe is unlikely, very unlikely, by random events. You understand he's saying. Deeply, shockingly unlikely, as in not going to happen. All right, here's Sir Fred Hoyle. Any astrophysicist would know his name. He's an English physicist who figured out the carbon atom and exactly what happens in the middle of the sun. Pretty big stuff. Smart guy. Now, he had some wacky theories on some other things, but very smart guy, okay? He says, and he doesn't believe in God either, okay? But I'm not taking him out of context. I'm not misquoting him. Here's what he said. He goes, if you just looked at the universe, he says, wouldn't you say to yourself that some super calculating intellect must have designed all of this? And he goes through, he says that the chance of this happening simply by the blind forces of nature at random, he said utterly minuscule. No way. No way could this happen at random is what he's saying to you. He says a common sense interpretation of the facts tells you, okay, that somebody, a super intellect, has monkeyed, that is, altered, manipulated physics and chemistry and biology. And he says, and there's nothing random worth speaking about at all in this universe. It all smacks of design. He says, the numbers that one calculates from the facts seem to me so overwhelming that you can't believe this is random. Now, he doesn't believe in God, mind you, but he just says it's crazy if you think this happened at random. So what he's saying is, we don't know how it happened. Let me just tell you, though, I'm going to give you an example. Lee is going to put a target on the middle of the floor here. It's that one happens to be a varmint target. If you like cute little squirrels, I'm sorry. I have not been shooting any of them lately, but at any rate. But here's what I'm going to do. We're going to do this by random. We're going to get this to happen by random events, okay? And in fact, I'm even given a big advantage. Really random would be me doing that. Okay, yeah, almost. Okay, no, but here's what I want to happen. This is going to be a mini simulation of fine-tuning everything about our universe like it is. I'm going to toss a coin, and here's what I need it to do. I want it to hit the exact center of that bullseye, the white dot, and I want it standing on edge when it comes to rest, head side facing me, all right? And I want that to happen 55 times in a row. Piece of cake, right? All right.
I'm here to get them, brother.
All right. See, I picked an honest man here. I don't think he's going to pocket my change. Because this is about the price of a nasty dog combo at Sam's here, right here. So there you go. Okay.
And you should know.
Yeah, and I would know, believe me. If you're splurging, the pizza combo's not bad. All right, yeah, okay, I just missed. Yeah, okay, almost, yeah. Yeah, all right, yeah, I'm getting it. 50 in a row, okay, see, that almost was, right? Yeah, but, okay, but I want it to land, standing up on edge. This ain't going so well, is it? Ain't gonna happen, is it? Thank you, Lee, I appreciate it. But I'm gonna tell you, the chances of me doing that 50 times in a row are far greater.
Your pocket change.
Thank you, sir. An honest brother right there. And I get my varmint target back. Don't shoot. All right. But the chances of me doing that were infinitely greater than the chances of this universe and this galaxy and this solar system and this planet landing the way they did by random. We could make a million other analogies, but I think you might get the idea. Professor Hawking, I won't read the excerpts in the book right now, but he says, yep, it is absolutely, he says you might as well call it impossible, pretty much. Okay? He goes, but it happened. It happened by random. And he says the reason we know that is because we're here. So he says we ought to just quit being surprised at how unlikely it is because here we are. All right? So, in any reasonable assessment, the chances of this happening without direction are just essentially zero. In fact, have you ever wondered where the terms astronomical odds come from? Like the stars, the galaxy? Yeah, that's how unlikely this is. So, if you really were intent on believing that it happened without a creator, what could you do to maybe make the odds a little more in your favor, or a lot more in your favor, or something better than zero? Well, that's where something called the Anthropic Principle comes in. Now, guys, in a few weeks here, you're going to know more than 99% of anybody you're ever going to encounter about the subjects that we're talking about, the origin of things. The Anthropic Principle. Brandon Carter put this together in 1973. And the literal meaning of that, simply anthropic, just means human. Anthropology, humans. Humans exist, we're here. Literally, that's what it means. Okay, well, the working meaning of it, though, is a little bit more than that. Whatever was necessary for us to be here and the universe to be this way happened. Okay, otherwise we wouldn't be here and we wouldn't be asking the question. So the fact that we are here and able to ask the question, it says, yeah, whatever was necessary for the universe and this all to happen, well, it did happen. So the usual application of that then is, like Professor Hawking, well, therefore, then obviously this happened by random chance, because despite those overwhelming odds, because we're here. Did you catch the logical fallacy there? All right? First of all, we're here. That's undeniable, I think. Unless you think we're living in the Matrix, it's undeniable. Yep, we are here. All right? The working meaning, whatever was necessary for us to be here happened. I'm going to call that undeniable too. Whatever it was, it happened. We're here. Okay? Now, the last part. It's a typical misapplication. Here's why. Therefore, this obviously happened by chance. Do you notice somebody put a few words in there that didn't have anything to support them? Despite the odds, because we're here. You see a little sleight of hand there. Who said it happened by chance? Obviously, because we're here. All it really tells you is whatever caused us to be here happened. Does that make sense?
The what, not how.
Yeah. So the what, we can all agree on that. But it actually, you're exactly right, it doesn't tell us anything about the how. Precisely. Tim?
Yeah, I think too, when they use words like obviously and this, that, and the other, and that thing, it makes you kind of dumb down any other possibility.
Yeah.
Makes sense?
Yeah.
I mean, this obviously had to happen.
Oh, yeah. Clearly happened.
And I mean, even in his thing there, he said, so this might be a potential.
Yeah.
That's happened. I would think, well, okay, at least he's open.
Exactly.
You know
Right, yeah. So if you say, yeah, we're here, then yeah, sure, I'm agreeing with you. Whatever it took to get the universe here, yeah, it happened. But that doesn't tell us anything about what it was, how it happened. It just tells us we're here. So it does nothing to inform that question or, to give us any explanation for it. And it doesn't do anything to mitigate or diminish the essentially zero chance of this happening without some direction. Okay, so now how are you going to come up with a good explanation that doesn't involve a creator? So they put it together with another part of this magic M theory. The first part was that the universe created itself a little while ago. The second part is, so did millions and millions of other universes that all exist in parallel. A multiverse. Not a universe, a multiverse. And some will even say an infinite number of universes, which is not possible. Okay, know anything about numbers. Okay. But at any rate, let's say millions upon millions of universes, okay? So the idea is, see, you thought that was just, the old Superman comic books, or it's always good for the next sequel of an Avengers movie, or I don't know, whatever. Hadn't seen them. But it's serious. Not making this up. That's the idea. It's like, well, okay, it seems impossible, but if you had millions upon millions of universes, then in one of them, I might hit that on edge 50 times, okay, et cetera, et cetera. See, so now the odds looking pretty good. We don't need no creator for this because, millions of universes. All right? Professor Hawking, okay, like I said, this is a seriously proposed idea, but it lacks any support whatsoever. Even Professor Hawking's major research collaborator, we mentioned this briefly last week, has said, M theory, he goes, it's not even a good theory. He said, first of all, there's about 500 different flavors of it, so which one are you, what are you going to do with that? And he said, and second, there's absolutely no observable support for any of it. Okay, now, what Professor Hawking says, he goes, hey, there may be other universes. In fact, he assumes that there are, and he pairs that with that Anthropic Principle to say, yep, that's how we got here. All random. M theory predicts that a great many universes were created out of nothing. He says, notice this, there is still hope. Okay, this is in 2018, 3 years ago. There is still hope that we see the first evidence for M theory at the particle accelerator. And I used to think I had to explain what CERN was, and then I found out everybody except me watches Big Bang Theory, and so everybody actually knows what CERN is. But anyway, big particle accelerator thing in Switzerland. He says, he goes, we might find it. It could be true. It could be true. We might find the first evidence of it, which means we haven't found it yet. Okay? So let's run the truth method on that. This multiverse idea, is it testable? Absolutely not. It's the very definition of not testable because you can only see things that are in this universe. See? Can't see what's in other universes, so you can't run an experiment on them. So not falsifiable that way. Is it observable? Nope, because you can't see into those other universes. You just have to believe that they exist, and we landed in the lucky one. All right? And it's not compatible with any observed phenomena, and you couldn't know if it was because you're not in the right universe. You're in this one. Okay, you get it? It's all magic. It's magic. And you have to just believe it even though you can't test it in any way whatsoever. It's the ultimate unfalsifiable theory. But all of that's irrelevant anyway because we live in this universe. And it's the only one we'll ever see. All right. So there's no reason to believe it. There's no way to know whether it would be true or not. It wouldn't change the odds anyway. In any given universe, the odds would still be overwhelming against it happening by chance. I hope that makes sense. So it does nothing to explain away the overwhelming odds of this all happening at random. I'm going to say this too. When you have to resort to conjecturing the existence of millions of other universes to try to overcome the impossible odds of your hypothesis being correct in one of them, you have just kind of confirmed that what you believe is not believable. But you're going to believe it anyway because you're determined to believe it even though it's just doesn't stack up, and that's an understatement. In fact, Professor Hawking was hoping that maybe the first evidence of M theory would come out of CERN, etc. Well, here's what came out instead. In 2017, they concluded that matter and antimatter, if they came out at random from a Big Bang, should have annihilated the entire brand new universe immediately. There would be nothing here. They can't figure out why our universe is composed almost entirely of matter and very little antimatter. So the more you look at it and the more good science that's done, instead of making a random arrangement of the universe look more likely, it now looks even more firmly impossible. Theory going down in flames. There's something called the Drake equation, which is a kind of a fanciful thing, but kind of figuring out how many planets probably are there in this galaxy, the Milky Way galaxy, that might, like ours, be suitable for life, atmosphere, not too close to too many stars so radiation cook everything, et cetera, et cetera. And when they ran all of that, and I mean these are not from creation believers, etc. So the way the equation's set up, it should tell you how many planets are there probably in this galaxy that could support life. You know what the predicted answer is? Less than 1. Our planet shouldn't even be here. It shouldn't even be, by random events, we shouldn't exist by random events. So there's very little possibility of, that way it shouldn't have happened. So if you put all that together, well, let's kind of, again, run a little score. And by the way, there are some initial sets of notes for anybody who may want one and didn't get one. And I'm not assuming that you fall in the category of want one, but at any rate, there are some more sets of those on the front here where you can kind of fill in a little scorecard if you want. But let's think about this. So, for this second major question, that is the precise structure of our universe, here's really what the theories or hypotheses that we have to consider. One is that it was an intentional arrangement. That is that a superior entity designed it and created it to specification. A second is a random arrangement. There was a Big Bang. There was nothing guiding it. Whatever happened, whatever caused the Big Bang, that was our first question. But whatever happened, it's just, it expanded and it formed a universe and this is it, and it landed exactly this way. The third, that there are millions and millions of other universes, all with random outcomes, and we're here to ask the question because we just happen to be in the one out of all the millions where everything just randomly happened to click. All right, so let's consider those three. Are they testable? No, obviously not. I can't devise an experiment to cause a Big Bang and create a universe and see how it lands. So no, not testable. Is it observable, directly observable? No, I wasn't there. However it happened, whether God did it or it was random or something, I wasn't there. So I can't directly observe it. So let me just ask you then, is it science? No, by strict definition, it's not. Now, we need to consider it anyway, but I'm just telling you, don't let anybody tell you, oh, we only consider things that are science. Well, then you can't consider any of those, because some of them are definitely not science. Okay, so it's not observable. Is it compatible with what we do know about physics, everything in our universe? The first one, that a superior entity created it, yeah, it would fit exactly, wouldn't it? And it sure looks that way, because even people who don't believe in God kind of have to admit that, yeah, it really looks like somebody did this. They didn't, but it looks that way. What about random arrangement? I think we've seen that. Overwhelmingly unlikely. Not really compatible, if you're honest at all, not compatible with known phenomena. What about this one? Well, like we said, yeah, how are you going to test that? How are you going to consider that? Millions of other universes, you're not allowed to see them. You have to take our word for it. Okay? There's nothing to consider. Okay, by definition. So, to explain the arrangement of all of this the way it is, it really comes down to either random events versus intelligent design. With one of those choices overwhelmingly consistent with our observations, and one of them overwhelmingly unlikely to be true. I'm going to go for what makes sense. Okay? So, the last one, which one makes the most sense? Which one has some power to explain things? Well, the idea of creation, it does exactly explain. If it's true, it explains everything perfectly. Exactly the way you see it and exactly the way you woke up this morning. Random arrangement? No, because it is just impossible by the odds. It's tough to accept that as the most likely explanation for anything. And what about multiple universes? No. No, not even an idea that you can seriously consider. So you're left with one, kind of like the first question, one that actually is able to explain everything perfectly if it's true, and others that really cannot explain what's there. I will tell you this before we leave. I've not used scripture throughout this because I don't want to depend on circular reasoning for what we happen to be discussing right now. But I will tell you what one ancient philosopher, even without our space telescopes and everything, ability to measure microwave radiation, etc. But here's what one person said when he considered what could be seen with the eye about our universe. And his inference was, the heavens declare the glory of God, and the sky above, or the firmament, etc., proclaims his handiwork. I think he might have been right. But it's a good observation. All right. Well, that would bring us then to our third major question. Now, to me, this is where it starts actually getting interesting. What was our third major question, the way I broke it down? The initial appearance of any kind of life on this planet. Because for us to get where we are, you got to have a universe come into existence. You got to have it come into an arrangement like ours that can support life. You got to have some kind of life start somehow, and then you have to have it become what we see all around us, humans and everything else. So to me, that the third question, here's the one nobody ever tells you about. You hear about evolution, but where did any life come from to start with? Evolution, if it were true, depends on mutations to life that exists in order to change it into something newer, better, etc. But nobody ever really talks much about where did that life come from to start with, do they? But that's at least as big a piece of the puzzle as how it got to this complexity. So, let me ask you this. This is Annika. That's a cute little thing. Chose her out of dozens and dozens at the pet store. I am a hypocrite. When they sneak into my house uninvited, they tend to get the death penalty. But if I choose them out of all the ones at the pet store, they get pampered and loved on, and there could even be some occasional baby talk, but not by me. I wouldn't do that. Okay. Much too sophisticated for that. Okay. But Annika, she is a happy girl. She is one happy girl because she's sitting there in my hand eating a little corner. Oh, they're meticulously clean animals. That's what you don't realize when you've got them in their nice aquarium. They're amazing. Okay. Take probably 30 baths a day. At any rate. And she's litter box trained too, by the way. And I'm not joking. Get a little litter box like that, okay? One corner of the aquarium. So, yeah. Okay, but anyway, that's a corner off of Pop-Tart crust that she's chowing on. So that's a happy girl right there. Okay. Now, all right. So, in the other picture in my hand there is a lump of charcoal. That's carbon, almost pure carbon. There's some calcium there. There's some other minerals. That is a pebble from my driveway. There's a little, small amount of some metals, and if you can see, there's some water there that it's all in. Okay. The base chemical composition of what's in this picture and what's in this beautiful, adorable picture, and no need for the R word, people. She's a mouse. Not anything that starts with an R. She would be very upset. Okay, but the chemical composition of those two is about the same. Okay, there's very, very little difference, chemically speaking, between this and that. But there's a big, big difference there, isn't there? What's the difference? You might say, well, okay, yeah, but this has form and structure. Okay? Well, so does that. Hot Wheels happen to be another one of my favorite things. Yes, I'm juvenile. They're 94 cents at Walmart, and I think that's a pretty good bargain. Man needs a new Corvette now and then, occasionally a Ferrari. Okay. Well, that's got form and structure, doesn't it? Well, yeah. Yeah. In fact, that's a good-looking car right there. Okay, so, well, okay, so that's really not the difference. You could say, well, this one moves. Yeah, well, so does that one. In fact, it moves in 4 directions and all kind of stuff, whatever. So what's the difference between these things and Annika? You know what the difference is. One of these things is alive. Okay? She jumps up and down. She sneezes. She's litter box trained. She exercises. You know, she figures out where the little heater is on a cold night and builds a little nest. Okay? Okay. She does a lot of the same things that you and I do. There's a big difference there, isn't there?
Does she go for a ride?
No, she won't quite fit there. Won't quite fit, but yeah. I think there's storybooks about that, though. Yeah. Little motorcycles. Yeah. So we come then to this question: the initial appearance and survival of some kind of life on this planet. How do you get that? I mean, anything. An amoeba, a bacteria, anything. Nothing so beautiful as Annika. Just anything. How can you, so that you can let evolution start working on it? Well, here's your main theories for that. One, a superior entity created it. Another, the primary atheistic theory or naturalistic theory, is that it happened spontaneously, and we'll look at that by a process called abiogenesis. That's a big word. We'll get into that. So that non-living things spontaneously gave life to the first living cell randomly. And then, from then on, it was just, it was easy once you got some life going. Or not easy, but, it evolved. Okay, and there is one kind of fringe that life landed on this planet on a meteorite from somewhere else, but then, of course, you got to figure out, well, how did it get somewhere else? So, that's kind of kicks the can down the road, I guess. All right, so that's really what you've got to consider. So we've got either a superior entity created it, or it happened by itself spontaneously from non-living materials. All right, well, let's talk about what is life. Well, we looked at some things a while ago. There are some things that have to be true for something to be defined as alive versus non-living, inanimate, whatever, dead. And here's the simplest. This is the most limited list I could come up with. Now, you could come up with a whole bunch of different things, okay? You don't have to be good-looking to be alive. I am alive, okay? You don't have to be smart. You don't have to be, okay? But there are some things you do have to be. Anything has to be if it's going to be alive. This is the most pared-down, limited list I could come up with. Containment. If it's not separate from its environment, it's now we have skin to contain us. Imagine where you would be without it. You would blend in very quickly with your environment, and that ain't pretty. That's what you call a greasy spot on the road. Okay, you've lost your containment. All right? But, I mean, you get what I'm saying. A bacteria has a cell wall or membrane. Okay, there has to be something to contain life, and it's separate from its environment. It has to carry on metabolism, doesn't it? It has to be able to use something for energy, and to be able to use that energy to do what it needs to do. That's metabolism. All right? Without it, there is no life. It has to be able to carry on synthesis, because everything that is alive makes things. All right? Our bodies make all kinds of things. Well, everything makes things. It has to make proteins, etc., if it's alive. It has to be able to do that in some way. It has to have some protection. That kind of goes along with containment. So it has to be protected from its environment, or it would cease to exist immediately. It has to be able to take in whatever it's going to use for metabolism. It has to be able to take things that are outside itself and get them in, kind of like I do with muffins and cookies right here. Okay, a cell might absorb them through the membrane, but you got to do it somehow. You got to get what's outside the cell, but only what you want, into the cell or the organism. It has to reproduce, otherwise you'll never see it. One could appear, but if it can't reproduce, that's the end of that. And then you're back to zero. All right? It has to be organized, or there is no function, there is no life. It has to be able to get rid of what it produces that it doesn't need, Every organism has to be able to do that somehow. And autonomy. If it's dependent on something else, then you can't really say that it's alive. Okay, there has to be some autonomy. It has to be its own organism. Self-repair is also almost nearly universal. And all the life that we know about has either DNA, RNA, or both in it. So we'll look in our extremely high complexity. There is no simple life on this planet. The simplest life is not simple in the least. Amazingly complex. So, if you will be good enough to come back next week, let's talk about how can you produce something living from non-living material. That's a very tall order, right? And opposed to creation by a superior entity, the two major theories that we looked at a while ago are that abiogenesis, I put it in quotes, all right, that is producing life from non-living things, or panspermia is this idea that it landed here from somewhere else in the universe. All right, folks, if you'll stick with me, I hope it's going to get useful to you. Thank you very, very much for being here today. And thank you for who you are in the body of Christ. We need each other. We will all need each other every day. Someday it'll be you helping. Someday it'll be you taking. We get our strength from each other. Get out there and encourage each other. Build each other up. I hope you have a great week ahead.
Before you leave this morning, I want to encourage Steve. You may not know, and you wouldn't have said anything. His mom passed away like last night or this morning.
About 5 hours ago.
So that speaks to his commitment. I'd like to have a prayer before we leave. Okay. Our Father in heaven, we're so thankful for this day that we can come and worship you. We're thankful for the opportunity that we have to be here and be of an encouragement to each other. We're so thankful that we can look forward to being with you throughout eternity. We're thankful for Steve and his commitment. We're thankful for their family. We ask that you would be with he and his sister Stephanie and their family in this time of loss. Help us to be an encouragement to him. We're so thankful that we have hope in